Hey everybody, it's Live Life Simple. We are up in northern Colorado today. We're rehydrating some Firehouse rigatoni. This is a Firehouse recipe from way back in the day. It's my family recipe. It's actually my dad's recipe. This is a really hearty meal. It's gonna warm your stomach, warm your soul, and which is perfect for today's weather. It's kind of foggy, a little bit chilly out still today. So I'm gonna give you the recipe for this Firehouse rigatoni. We're gonna go for a little hike, and then we're gonna rehydrate this at high elevation. Coming up. There are lots of things that I like about this homemade rigatoni recipe. One being that it's very versatile. So we can make this as a whole like we're making it today and just rehydrate it. Or you can easily turn this into an individual pantry style where you're just grabbing things out of your freeze-dried pantry and throw this together to make a meal in a jar, a meal in a bag, or just put together a quick meal. I want to run through the ingredients real quick before we start putting some stuff together. You need rigatoni noodles, of course, because this is rigatoni. You can use other types of noodles if you want to, but rigatoni is what I tend to use. I'm gonna actually freeze dry the rigatoni noodles separate from the sauce. You're also gonna need some whole tomatoes or diced tomatoes. You're gonna need a couple cans of tomato sauce, a can of tomato paste, and then you're also gonna need about 4 cups of tomato juice. The canned juice is fine. I'm using my homemade tomato juice, and I actually have a video on how to make this. If you wanna see that, I'll put the card right here. You can click on that to see how to make homemade tomato juice. You're also gonna need a pound of meatballs or a pound of stew beef, like cubed roast or something like that, as well as Italian sausage. If you don't like spicy, you can just do a regular type sausage. And the sausage type that works the best is the kind that's in a casing. You're gonna need some mushrooms, some garlic, an onion, a bell pepper or the equivalent of a bell pepper, and you can choose whichever color you want. I'm using red today. And this wouldn't be an Italian food recipe without a little basil and oregano. We'll start the recipe by cooking our rigatoni noodles. That's simple enough, self-explanatory. Then you're gonna wanna dice up your 1 pound of meatballs or stew beef, and also your 2 pounds of Italian sausage. And these are gonna rehydrate best and freeze dry best if they're cut into about 1/2-inch strips. Normally I would cut them into bigger chunks if we were just doing regular rigatoni. If you cut them into bigger chunks, it's gonna take a little bit longer to freeze dry. It's also gonna take a little bit longer to rehydrate. And then we just want to do a quick brown on each of these. And then once they're done, I like to put them onto a plate with a paper towel on it. That kind of absorbs some of the extra grease, but I'll leave it up to you whether or not you want to do that and how you want to store your freeze-dried food. And while we're waiting for our meat to cook and our noodles to get cooked, we're gonna dice up that pepper and an onion. We're then gonna drain off our rigatoni noodles, and then we're gonna put those right onto a freeze dryer pan and get those freezing. And now we're gonna get working on our sauce. We're gonna use 1 can of diced or whole tomatoes. We're gonna do 2 cans of tomato sauce. Those were both 15-ounce style cans. And then we do 1 can of tomato paste, 12-ounce can of tomato paste. And then we want 4 cups of tomato juice. Give all of this a good stir, try and make it one even texture. And then this will actually smooth out quite a bit the longer this cooks. This is actually gonna cook for about 2 hours, but first we're gonna add in all of our other ingredients. And cooking all of this sauce and ingredients together really brings out the flavors in everything. So we'll add in our 1 onion. We'll add in our 1 bell pepper. We're gonna add in all of the meat. I'm gonna add in 8 ounces of mushrooms. These are already freeze dried, so we're just gonna end up freeze drying them again. I'm gonna add in a couple cloves of minced garlic. We'll add a tablespoon of basil and then 1/2 teaspoon of oregano or Italian seasoning or whatever type of Italian seasonings that you like to add into your red sauce. And this looks pretty amazing. Can't wait to eat it. Smells amazing. And this is just gonna sit and simmer. You're gonna set your stovetop for as low as possible. This is gonna simmer for 2 to 3 hours. It's really gonna infuse lots of flavor in that time. You're gonna wanna stir it every 15 minutes or so the stuff does not burn to the bottom. And that's about all there is to our rigatoni sauce. You can definitely see why this is gonna make a good pantry ingredients recipe. Everything that we've put in here so far is something that you could have on hand in your pantry that's already freeze-dried. Grab it off a shelf, throw it all together, make rigatoni. I also like this recipe because it makes very large portions. I actually cut this recipe in half from the Firehouse recipe. This is a recipe that was made for, you know, many people, firefighters. So I cut it in half. It should now fit onto 4 medium freeze dryer trays. You can amplify that as you need it, depending on which size freeze dryer you have. And now we're just gonna wait for this to cook for about 2 to 3 hours. This is really kind of where the magic in the sauce happens, I think. And then we're gonna go into some freeze dryer trays. I'm gonna pre-freeze, then we're gonna freeze dry it. We're gonna put together a meal in a jar or a meal in a bag recipe for this, and hopefully rehydrate this somewhere cool. And this rigatoni recipe, as well as over 300 freeze drying recipes, can be found at thefreezedryingcookbook.com. And we also have a hard copy version of the cookbook as well as a freeze drying handbook now available. And if you have questions or you have some learning to do about freeze drying, there's a couple resources. One, you can go to our Facebook or MeWe group. It's Retired at 40's freeze drying group. You can use this search function, magnifying glass, and search threads, keywords, topics, members, all kinds of things. Most likely your question has already been answered at some point in there, so it's very easy to search through the group that way. The other resource is if you want to know about these freeze dryers. These are made by Harvest Right. You can get to that affiliate down in the description. If you click on show more, that will take you to Harvest Right's website. And if you end up purchasing a freeze dryer through that affiliate link, it greatly benefits this channel. It greatly benefits the freeze drying community by helping us grow our resources, helping us grow our social media groups. It helps us do giveaways in the groups, and it also helps us develop new products for streamlining freeze drying. So any of the products you've seen in this video or in other videos can be found at freezedryingsupplies.com if you'd like to check those accessories out. Now let's see how our freeze-dried rigatoni did and get a rehydration method and rehydrate somewhere cool. So after letting this simmer for about 2.5 hours, I think this is completely done. The smell that it's putting off is pretty amazing. What I want to do, I think this should be enough for 2 trays. I want to evenly distribute this, and then we're going to put dividers in the 10 portion setting. That way we can get an even weight and we can divide these up into equal portions. We can figure out how to put these into a jar or an MRE style bag. And that ended up being just the perfect amount for 2 medium trays. So I have 2 trays full of noodles. I have 2 trays full of sauce. I'm gonna lid these, put them in the deep freeze with our noodles, and we'll see you at the freeze dryer. All right, here we go. Make a new freeze drying recipe. Well, this took 31 hours and 4 minutes. And this sauce is really thick, so I'm gonna use the thermal imaging camera on that just to make sure that it's done all the way through. The noodles, I have no doubt that those are done. And everything's looking good, even those blue spots are at 80 degrees, so these are all good to go. I'm gonna package these up. I'm also going to give you guys a quick shot of the finished product. The dividers made some nice portion sizes for us. I think I'm gonna put 2 or 3 or 4 in each of these bags. So our meal in a jar today is real easy to put together. We're gonna do 2 cups of our rigatoni noodles and then 2 squares of our rigatoni sauce. That's gonna fill the mason jar up almost to the top, and then if I did my calculations right, we should just need 2 cups of water, hot water added to it, and that should fill it basically to the brim. We're gonna let it sit. All right, so we're gonna put a lid on this. I'm gonna shake it up a little bit, and this is probably gonna need to sit for about 10 minutes, just because these noodles are pretty difficult to get rehydrated. And then throughout that 10 minutes, we're gonna probably, every couple minutes, you're gonna wanna rotate this again, just so we can make sure all that water is circulating back around everything. Should be a good portion for 2 people or 1 hungry person. It's about 4 cups of food total. Well, it looks good. Let's see how I rehydrated.
sauce is absolutely perfect. Noodles could use a little bit longer. Depending on what brand and what type of noodles you use, they might take more than 10 minutes. These are pretty stubborn, but they're totally fine the way they are. Meatballs and sausage all did really well. Do a dance. Good recipe today. Awesome environment we're in, and in the meantime, remember to live life simple. We'll catch you next week.